My name is Norberto Andrade. I'm a Privacy and Public Policy Manager at Facebook. I'm based in California, and I get to spend huge parts of my day with the product teams that are actually building AI systems at Facebook. So I'd like to start, before diving into the AI ethics and how we approach this issue, I'd like to start off with just a quick few words on how AI is actually being used at Facebook. So as you can imagine, AI is foundational to everything we do. It's it's at the core of our engineering efforts. It is also behind some of our most used features, such as newsfeed, search, or face rec. To give you a quick example, I can talk to you a little bit about...
And then we take those few dozen predictions and we weight them and
so this is, I didn't know this would have sound. So the ranking of newsfeed is actually powered by machine learning. So we use this technology to prioritize which types of content should appear higher or lower in your newsfeed. So this is a video that we launched earlier last year that explains to a certain level of detail what are the various signals that go into this equation to actually delineate how your newsfeed will look like. So we look at signals like how many people shared, reacted, or comment on a post to determine how higher or lower it will appear on your newsfeed. But most important than why we're using Facebook, why we're using AI at Facebook is actually the reason of why. And here I would like to note that AI is deeply connected to our mission and to our values as a company. Our mission statement says that Facebook is all about giving people the power to build community and to bring the world closer together. So AI is deeply connected to that mission. It's not just a mission blank statement, it's actually anchored at a very deep level into how our technology operates and how we design it. It's also absolutely instrumental, AI, in keeping people safe in our community, and I'll give some examples of that. So what do we mean by bringing the world closer together? So if you look at AI, and namely at natural language processing, we actually use this technology to help people communicate. And we do this by breaking language barriers. So by using natural language processing, we can actually serve automated translations. And right now, in today's age, we are actually providing nearly 6 billion of translated posts every day on Facebook. Another example, which is very dear to me because I was directly involved in reviewing this product and working very closely with the product managers, with the engineers and the researchers, is actually using AI for accessibility and inclusion. As you know, our platform is becoming increasingly visual, with more and more people uploading more and more photos and videos. And it's important for everyone in our community to be able to enjoy Facebook in the same way. But unfortunately, there are, in the world, there are over 39 million people that are blind. There are over 246 million people that have severe visual impairments. And that does not enable people to participate in the discourse and conversation around visual content. To remediate that, we've actually been using artificial intelligence and computer vision to build a technology that we've called automatic alternative text. And it basically, through advancements in object recognition, it recognizes and identifies objects, concepts, and actions in photos and videos. Once we do that with computer vision, we actually generate an audio description for people that access Facebook through screen readers to actually hear the description of the main items that are part of that photo when they scroll through their newsfeed. Also, an important component of why we're using Facebook, and as I mentioned at the beginning, is also deeply connected to our mission. And safety here is key. So we use AI to keep our community safe and to help enforce our community standards. Our community standards are basically the rules that determine what's allowed on our platform. it determines what stays up and what comes down. Recently, we've released our second community standards enforcement report. And basically, we published some interesting numbers that showcase to what extent people view content that is violating of our community standards, that might be offensive, might be toxic, and to what extent we actually use AI to detect proactively that type of content. And we divided this report into 6 categories, showcasing the way that we enforce our policies against, for example, graphic violence, adult nudity, terrorist propaganda, hate speech, spam, and fake accounts. We've added in this second report that was released last November 2 new categories, bullying and harassment, and child nudity and sexual exploitation of children. So to be more concrete, and just to give you an example, as you can imagine, content that praises, endorses, shows support or some type of advocacy for terrorist organizations or terrorists is absolutely not allowed in our platform. So we are using AI to actually act upon that type of content. So just to give you an idea and a specific number, in the third quarter of 2018, we removed 3 million pieces of content of terrorist propaganda. And most interestingly, 99.5% of that content was actually flagged and identified through AI systems before any user of Facebook would actually report it. So I've talked a little bit about how we're using AI at Facebook, why we're doing it, and now let's delve deeper into the mechanics of it, of actually how we're building AI. So let's look to the engine and understand the various processes, approaches, and teams that are involved in this complex process. And this means, in other words, to talk about our AI ethics approach. And here we take a holistic picture. We invest in people that are building the algorithms, in the data that we use to train the algorithms, to teach the AI, and the algorithms themselves, that at the end of the day ultimately represent what AI learns. So let's begin with people. And here there are 3 important entities, let's say. We have the people in terms of the ones that build the technology, the engineering workforce. We have the people that review what is being built. And we have people as teachers. And I'll explain what I mean by that later on. So let's start with the reviewers, because I think people as builders is pretty straightforward. So at Facebook, we have a privacy cross-functional review process that that gathers a number of different teams and that meet with product managers and engineers to review the pipeline of products leveraging AI and machine learning that might be touching on personal identifiable information or might have broader societal and privacy implications. So this is an ongoing and iterative process. It starts at the ideation phase. So even before engineers start building these AI systems, we meet with them, we discuss their roadmaps, and we start flagging for various considerations. I mentioned it is a cross-functional process because it gathers different teams, not only my own team, I'm part of the public policy team, but also the legal team, the marketing team, communications, a specific privacy program, or security. It is also a process that leverages external input. So part of the role of the public policy team within this context is actually to reach out and to brief policymakers, privacy advocates, academics, and other influential stakeholders on those products, obviously before we roll them out, because we want to understand from the external community how those products would resonate. What blind spots are we still overlooking? What changes can we still make? So part of my job is to establish that bridge and provide that valuable feedback back into the process. This process is also heavily documented. So every product that is finally approved will have a vast array of privacy decisions that have been documented. So people as teachers. So AI, and specifically machine learning, at the end of the day is a product of the data that is trained on. And that data comes from our community. So data comes from people. So data is a reflection of who we are, for better or for worse. of what we do, what we believe. Data is a reflection of people's actions, beliefs, preferences, habits, but also bias. So think of AI as actually being profoundly human, like a child that learns, absorbs, and imitates from what is exposed to. So it's kind of an analogy in the same way that we teach children is how we should teach AI, and we should teach them well, and we should make sure that we're passing along the right values in this process. So people are actually the ones that are teaching AI, and we need to make sure that we understand who these people are. Because if AI only learns from a very small group of people, AI will have a very narrow point of view. So it's important to understand who these people are so we can mitigate bias and make sure that they are not embedded into the automated process. But so we need a diverse set of voices at the table. But no diverse set of voices at the table will always be perfect because we are inherently biased, and bias will always be there. So for that, we have a number of approaches and safeguards that we put in place to make sure that we are reducing and mitigating bias in our AI systems. So let's talk a little bit about the data that we use to train AI. And here, this is part, again, of the privacy cross-functional review process that we have. There are a number of stages, and this one is, importantly, about how we annotate data. Most of our systems are AI systems, machine learning systems are supervised ones, meaning that we need to annotate data sets to train the machines to predict, classify, categorize, whatever the output we're working on. So moving on to the data annotation, and this is something that we're actually showcasing live in real time on our booth outside if you want to check it out. I'll give you the example of a concrete product. So on virtual reality, we have a feature that converts photos of people, selfies, into their online avatars. And to do that, you need a couple of things. You need, obviously, data, photos, but you need also the art assets. You need the avatars. So you are teaching the machine to convert that photo into that avatar. But super important in this process, it's not only the data and the example of the output that you're working on, is actually how you're annotating that data. Because labels are immensely important to make sure that we are training the AI systems on specific items within those photos that the AI system should be taking into account. Because, for example, if you don't have labels for skin color or hair color or beard or glasses, simply the AI system will not generalize and will not reproduce that. So it's very important to have a process in place for human annotation, and that's what we do at Facebook. We have a dedicated team whose job is to ensure consistency of all the labeling guidelines. And it makes sure that the set of human annotators that we have to do this sort of tasks receive clear and approved guidelines that are approved from various teams, and that the process is done as objective and accurately and comprehensively as possible. So finally, we get to the algorithm. So what ultimately the AI system learns. And here we have a process in place to check the fairness of the algorithm. So you can select, and the right data set is balanced and representative. You can do a phenomenal job at annotating it and being very consistent and accurate in that process, but there is still the risk of AI learning or propagating biases that were not caught in the previous stages. So for that, we have in place an algorithmic fairness assessment procedure that basically consists of a tool that we've built to do two fundamental things. First, to check the diversity of subgroups represented in the data set. And these subgroups can be subgroups of people structured by age, gender, or location, for example. So it gives a holistic view, a kind of an anatomy of the data set to the machine learning engineers that were working on that specific machine learning model. And secondly, what it does, it assesses how the algorithm is performing across each of those groups. And I'll give you an example with a concrete product, which is our jobs tool. So people at Facebook can actually search and apply for jobs with local businesses through our platform. And here we use the fairness flow to do those two important steps. So we first check the anatomy of the data set by looking at relevant groups that are targeted by the algorithm, namely in terms of age and gender. And then we understand and experiment with the tool to understand how that algorithm is performing across each of those groups. Is it performing equally well for men and women, for people under 40 or over 40? And most importantly, we are experimenting with the fairness flow, integrating it into our centralized platform for building machine learning at Facebook, which is the Facebook Learner Flow. This allows engineers to experiment with the tool, to test it out, and to let us know how we can improve going forward. So to finalize my presentation, and I'm well over time, I would like just to spend 2 words on 2 important elements of not product development AI, but what are we doing in terms of advancing research on artificial intelligence. So one is our Facebook Artificial Intelligence Research Lab, whose mission is to advance the state of art of artificial intelligence through open research. And this is a lab that is actually structured into various locations, has over 160 people, and is continuously growing. Just last year, we had 3 new offices that were open. And by open research here, we mean a couple of things. First, that they publish their findings in peer-reviewed journals and conferences, making them publicly available. They engage into academic collaborations, and they contribute to the open source community by releasing and publishing data sets, models, and code. So I mentioned just academic collaboration. So it's important for us that this type of research is not done in isolation, but is actually done with external experts and researchers, because that's the best way to foster ideas. So along that line, we recently announced, just last Sunday, our support and commitment for independent research, academic research on artificial intelligence. So we've partnered with the Technical University of Munich, and we supported the creation of a new Institute for Ethics in Artificial Intelligence within that university. We'll be independent, operating completely independent from Facebook. It's a partnership that will count at the beginning with the initial funding of $7.5 million over the next 5 years. And the Institute will be tasked with conducting evidence-based, independent, and cutting-edge research on important issues surrounding AI, such as fairness that we talked about, privacy, safety, and transparency. And with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you so much for listening.